cool, Schlockster. What's up, everybody? We are talking about the 1985 classic horror film, Fright Night. Chris, what is going on? When did you first see this film? It's a favorite of many people, and I believe it's a favorite of yours.
I saw it in the 90s. Yeah, I think I was on mute there for a second. So, the usual. Mid 90s, I would say, so the teenage years.
So, okay. So you were a teenager when you saw it, not like what, roughly mid-teen, preteen.
Yeah, I would say, I would say like early teens. I definitely, so Lost Boys was probably my first like 80s vampire movie. And man, that just made me love the genre. Such a great film.
Love the vampire genre?
Just the 80s teenage horror movies.
Gotcha. Yeah.
More vampire more than not, but we could throw, if we're not doing just horror movies, then The Burbs would definitely be up there for one of the first ones I saw. And then Monster Squad I saw after that. And so then, I started looking for the different ones. And of course, this came up on a lot of people's lists. And so I remember seeing that probably in the mid 90s, I would say.
Yeah, a lot of people love this movie. I didn't see it until give me 1 second. I have a fan blowing on me. I'm afraid it's affecting the audio. Sorry, technical difficulty. It is very warm in here, so I have a fan going. But not now, because I want you all to have the best audio quality we can get.
Yeah, I think you going off screen made us lose a lot of fans. So yeah we're not going to worry about that.
But yeah, I saw it in college. Actually, it's back when I was getting physical DVDs from Netflix, and I got what's that one you just named, Monster Squad.
Yep.
Around the same time, and so they were recommending similar things to me. So I think I may have watched them back to back, and so I do get them mixed up periodically. Okay. Watching it through this time, I was like, oh, they're very different movies. I don't know why I would mix them up, but it's because I watched them together so close in time. But yes, many people love this movie, so much so that when they created it, it cost them $9 million, maybe $9.5 million to make, but it made almost $25 million in theaters. So this is not our typical like horror schlock fare that it flopped and no one went and saw it, and it gained a cult following later. I don't know if you could even call this a cult film, because it was popular when it came out. And in fact, we have a sequel to it. We got a remake in 2011, and I didn't know this, that also had a sequel. The remake had a sequel just a couple of years later. And apparently, I found this really interesting. It's been remade 4 different times in India, in like the Bollywood scene. So we got let me read the names off to you, just so you can hear me butcher them. But Wohi Bayanak Rat, Kalpana House, aka Bungalow 666.
That's a great title.
Amavasi Araval, and Neighbors.
Ah, okay. And is that the one with Seth Rogen?
Yeah. That is little known. That is
it's just Seth Rogen getting high and doing his laugh that he does. Those vampires are like eating him alive.
Like, Neighbors is what really happened, but Fright Night is the perspective of Seth Rogen, like as he's high. The frat kids are vampires. So yeah, a lot of love for this movie, so much so that it's been remade many times.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's interesting because after I saw this movie, I really wanted to see the sequel, and you can't get it anywhere. Like, you can buy a VHS of it for like $60, which, I mean, I'll probably break down and do someday, but I haven't justified it yet to myself. I'm like, $30? Yeah, I'd do that. But like, come on, people.
I've seen some reviews lately of the second one. Portal B just did a review of it not too long ago, and so and I've seen some other ones pop up.
I think
so
you can get
maybe
like
it's available now.
You can. I checked yesterday. It's VHS or like import DVDs and import Blu-rays, but they're also expensive. So,
well, someday we'll do it.
Right? Someday.
Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday we'll do it. So what this show is, we like to talk about weird, campy, schlocky movies. They kind of really run the gamut. The way we do is we like to talk about what's good and what's bad about the movies. Generally, the person who didn't pick the movie talks about those. And then we go into our section called Schlock, where we just talk about what stuck out to us, what we think the ideas are, what we want to pontificate on.
It's a catch-all.
It's the catch-all. And it's probably maybe the more interesting section because our minds go every which way. But first, before we get into all of that, we like to talk about the web of Schlock. Chris, have we seen any of these people before in our Schlock journey?
Maybe not on the show, but definitely in the Schlock journey of our movie watching over the decades. The director, Tom Holland.
That Tom Holland?
Not that Tom Holland.
The famous historian?
You're right. The Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah. It was him?
It was him. Now, this is a different Tom Holland. He has a screenwriting credit before he started directing for a little movie called Class of 1984, which we have seen Class of 99 in the show.
Did he do 99?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought.
No. So Fright Night was his directorial debut. And then he did a movie called Fatal Beauty. And then he went on to do a little movie called Child's Play, which he wrote and directed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yep.
I knew that name.
A couple episodes of Tales from the Crypt. He did a Stephen King movie, Thinner. And just he's just been doing different Tom Holland's Twisted Tales in 2014. And definitely. And he also had writing credit in 1983 on Psycho 2. So very interesting career there. A lot of cool stuff.
And by the way, in 2020, he announced that he wants to do a direct sequel to Fright Night.
Nice.
Called Fright Night Resurrection, I believe. Who knows if that's going to happen? I think in 2020, there were plenty of people that were like, they had a lot of time on their hands. And they're like, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to clean the house. I'm going to write a new movie. I'm going to make a new album.
So actor-wise, Amanda Bierce, who played Amy, she went on to be one of the characters in Married with Children, like in 200 episodes of that.
Old Marcy Darcy.
The old Marcy Darcy, yep. And then she's been doing some movies ever since then, appearing here and there. Charlie, William Ragsdale. He had a stint in Justified. He was in Fright Night 2. He's appearing in a lot of movies. He even had a cameo as an older priest in Renfield that came out earlier this year. So he's still.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's still doing his thing. Now, Roddy McDowall, who played Peter Vincent, he was Cornelius in the first two Planet of the Apes movies, and then he was Caesar in the two Planet of the Apes movies after that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Back in the late 60s, early 70s. Evil Ed. You know, he's done some directing and some acting. He was in 976 Evil, but I thought he would pop up a little more than he did because he was very memorable in this.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then of course my favorite, Jerry the vampire, which is a great name for a vampire. Chris Count
Jerry
Sarandon. Yeah, Chris Sarandon. You might know him as Prince Humperdinck from Princess Bride.
Humperdinck. Yes. he looks like a handsome Chris Kattan.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. And then you might recognize his voice as Jack Skellington from The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, for real? I didn't know he did that. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And he's done just tons of stuff, all the way back to the 70s. I remember, I think the first thing I saw him in was Dog Day Afternoon, which is a great movie. But he's one of those actors where you recognize his face right away, and yeah, just immensely watchable. I'm a very Chris Sarandon fan.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome. And you can't beat being in one of the best movies ever made.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I mean, if you're in Princess Bride, you're royalty.
Yeah. And speaking of one of the best movies ever made, make sure you stick around to the very end of our show, because we have some big announcements of what we have coming up. So little teaser there. Are we ready to get into good and bad?
Let's do this. What is good about this movie?
Yeah. So you picked the movie, so I'll say what's good, and I'll tell you what. You know me. I hate vampire movies. I don't like vampires.
Except Lost Boys.
I think that
and Blade 2?
And Blade 2. I don't think that's a vampire movie, though.
I think we talked about that on the show.
Yeah. Anyway, we just did a revisit of Rockula, and that's I like that more as a musical than a vampire movie. But so this movie, it's no different than most vampire movies for me. I didn't like it. However, I didn't like anything in this movie. But oddly enough, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and for some reason, this movie turns out to be like very charming in the end, and I don't really understand it. So
it's because it's a good movie, but you know.
So I mean, yeah, there's something there's something charming about it, extremely likable. The characters, they're pretty one-dimensional, but they're likable. Like, I like Evil Ed, you know, even though he's like crazy annoying.
He's supposed to be, though, right?
Right. Yeah. I like Jerry. He plays a good, like, sexy vampire, even though that's the thing I hate about vampires, is that they're sexy. He does a really great job with it. So yeah, this movie is really kind of a mystery to me. Like, I don't know why. I don't know why I like it. I will give you one solid thing, though. The special effects. So they really, like, kind of run the whole range of we get some pretty bad stuff where it's very clear that he's wearing a rubber mask. But then we get to some pretty amazing stuff. And apparently they spent $1 million on the special effects.
That's so impressive.
Good portion of the budget, which was, I guess, at the time, the most amount of money a movie had spent on vampire special effects.
Okay, nice.
And that seems like a drop in the bucket now. But remember, it's a $9 million budget. So
it was a low budget movie. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
So maybe you can tell me what are some of the things that I should be liking in this movie?
Well, you nailed one, the FX. Yeah, I think they spent that much money, but they spent it in key areas that look just amazing. And then I think they kind of ran out of money and time for some of the others. It reminded me of, like, the special effects in Phenomena. Is that the one? Or no, Dead and Buried. I'm trying to think of the one we watched. Yes. I think it was Dead and Buried.
It was Stan Winston.
Where he left. Yeah. And so there were, like, really just amazing special effects. And there were a couple of key moments that were just really bad. And that's what this was. But the good, again, outweighs the bad in this movie. I think it's a super charming movie. But I'm a sucker for teenagers fighting monsters, especially in the 80s. That's a trope that I enjoy watching, probably because I grew up around that time. I think the directing is really solid. He has some really cool shots, and just kind of that classic, that pan over to the house, and just his framing. And it's just really interesting. The set design, I think, is really interesting. And then two things that I really liked are the protagonist's desperation. No one believes him. And you talk about how you like protagonists who get dirty and sweaty. This kid's sweating in this whole movie, like, right? And it's really interesting how fast this movie takes place. It's in a couple days, right? And like no one's believing him, and the help he gets is only help because they were trying to convince him that he was wrong, and the cops are out, and it very puts you much in his shoes of like, what would you do if you saw a vampire next door and no one believes you?
Yeah, I guess Tom Holland's trying to create a boy who cried wolf, a boy who cried vampire movie,
right? And that goes back to kind of Rear Window and other movies where no one believes you see something that's out of the ordinary, and no one's going to believe you, and you have no proof, but you know what's happening. Right. So what do you do? Mm-hmm. And the other thing I really liked is the Peter Vincent character. I've seen this in a couple movies, but I like the mentor who turns out to be a hack and then gets a chance to redeem himself. I think that's a fun trope that I've seen in other movies. It's just a fun twist on the perfect mentor, right? Like you look up to this character, he's on TV, you're going to him because you're desperate, but he turns out to be just a hack, a nobody, a liar, right? But then through the circumstances of your plot, he has a chance to redeem himself and become that which he portrayed.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that dynamic a lot.
Well, let me move into my bad, because I think a lot of what worked for you didn't work for me. Okay. I mentioned the characters a little bit in that I thought they were one dimensional. Like it's just very weird that they change their convictions very quickly, except for when we get to Peter Vincent. Then it slows down some, but at the beginning, I don't know, it just felt like everyone turned on a dime. But with the Peter Vincent character, I eventually settled into it once he was introduced in the flesh and we kept going. I settled into it, but my problems with it is that this guy is clearly like 17 or 18. Charlie, our main character, right? He's almost an adult. It would make more sense to me that he would look at someone on TV and be like, "This guy knows about vampires," if they were like 12. Like,
right?
It doesn't seem particularly believable to me. What would feel more believable to me is if the guy was a host of something like Believe It or Not, right? Where like, hey, this might be true, and I do believe in this stuff, and then he goes and contacts him, and he doesn't actually believe in anything.
Right. That's kind of what happened in the remake, where they kind of made him more that kind of character. He was a magician, but he was also
kind of a Chris Angel.
Yeah, and so it made more sense that he would follow him. But you don't know. We never get to see the entire Fright Night TV show, right? So we don't know what he talks about before he shows the movie. Like he could really be into the whole lore of it. Now they should have showed that to make that more believable.
Well, exactly. And that goes into my next problem, which is the pacing of this movie, the pacing and the editing. Yeah, the directing might be really cool and they might have some really great shots in it. But the rate at which this movie moves is just breakneck speed. It is the opposite of a slow burn. It's like 5 minutes into the movie and we get the casket getting moved in next door. Like there is really not a whole lot of setup at all. And by the time you get to the midpoint of the movie, it seems like you're entering like part 2, right? This sequel of the movie.
Right.
It just moves along so quick. And I feel like because of that, we're missing a lot of information, or we're missing some parts that could be elaborated on a lot more. And I think there's like some sloppy transitions that kind of feel like non sequiturs.
There are some sloppy transitions. There are some good transitions too, but I'll give you that. So the pace of the movie is different, but it's not your normal thing. We don't have that nice long setup, but I'm going to argue that it's set to the pace of the protagonist as he's dealing with what's happening. So it's putting the viewer in the same shoes of like, you see this coffin and there's no time to slow down. Things are just happening. So I think you're supposed to be off kilter and kind of rushed and feel disturbed. And I think that puts you in the mindset of the protagonist. So I think the pacing and editing reflect the internal state of the main character, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, fair enough. It didn't work for me. I mean, they go and then they have this kind of Three Amigos type character that goes in there that you don't get all the background. And to me, this is my last bad, is that it's really kitchen sinky, and sometimes that's good, but sometimes that's really bad. Like I have a picture of it, of a part that really kind of boggled me. It's when he stabs him in the hand. It's when Charlie stabs Jerry in the hand with a pencil, and it turns him into like more of his true vampire form, and he's like, "Ah!" Is he allergic to wood? What's going on here?
Right. Yeah. That part does not work for me either. It's very confusing, and it makes you not understand the rules of the vampires in this film.
Exactly. Had he stabbed him in the heart with it, and that happened, that would make a lot more sense to me. It's like, oh,
or if it had been a crucifix, or if it had been holy water or silver or something that we know about vampires. We get wooden stake,
right?
But
so they're just throwing everything in, which in some ways I like. I mean, I really like that they transform into animals, right? It's not like a big werewolf transformation. There's kind of a de-transformation, but the fact that they can just do it and it's not like really painful or a big deal,
right? That makes a great. I love the end where he turns into a bat. But yeah.
So before we move on, tell me something that you didn't like in it.
Well,
I guess maybe you did. You didn't like the pencil thing.
the pencil thing. I really like Jerry, and I like him in this movie, but like watching it this time through, it feels dated in a way that the rest of it doesn't. It feels like,
what do you mean?
Well, like it's all 1980s-y, right? And there's that whole nostalgic watching those films, like the whole Stranger Things vibe. And the rest of the characters feel like they could be in Stranger Things. But he feels like trapped in the 80s in a way that just doesn't even work in a nostalgia way. Like just his wardrobe and hairstyle, and like, it's just interesting. So it's not a bad per se, but it took me out of it a little bit.
It's all those Bill Cosby sweaters.
It's just, there's something off about it that like, yeah. Some of the FX were bad. Overall, I really liked the music, but some of the music cues were meh. I did really enjoy a lot of the silence. And if it wasn't silent, they had the sound effects turned up more than the music in some areas. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really effective and interesting.
Well, was the composer for this, did he do the music for Terminator?
He did.
Okay.
Yeah. And
so I thoroughly enjoyed more that. Of you.
No, I thought he did a good job on a lot of it. I just think some of it, I don't know if it was bad music per se, just it felt off with the cue with the scene and stuff. Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't have a lot.
You mark it. This is a movie that you didn't enjoy the music in.
I enjoyed some of the music a lot. I love that they have the 80s theme song at the end, the Fright Night theme song. 80s movies with theme songs titled after the movie. That's one extra letter grade in my book.
It's my favorite. I can't wait for Marvel to start doing that.
Right?
Explain.
I can't believe more movies don't do that anymore. But anyways, shall we move on to Schlock?
Yeah, let's Schlock it. So you brought up a really interesting topic prior to us starting the show. Yeah, and it's something that I call suburban horror.
Yeah.
This idea of you don't know what your neighbors are doing.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. And it also kind of has that like voyeurism kind of vibe of like, I'm thinking like classics are like Rear Window. You know, it's the guy who's stuck at home and he thinks he sees a murder, but he's also tired and He's not quite sure. And here we have this. It's really interesting because his friends and mom know that he's addicted to this Fright Night show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that he's really into vampires.
Yeah, he can't even keep making out because he's got to like stop and watch the show.
Correct. So that's his character arc, which is hilarious, which we'll get back to later. So I called this shot watching because he's watching Fright Night, but he's literally staring out his window watching Fright Night.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting to have that idea of like just going out into the night and looking, and you see something you shouldn't see, and no one believes you, and you don't know what to do about it. The Burbs, that's another great example.
Mm-hmm.
And then, they kind of did an update of Rear Window in the 2000s, Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf, which was that kind of same.
Really good movie.
Oh, I thoroughly enjoyed that movie. Yeah. Yeah. It's just a fun genre of like, suburban horror where you don't know what your neighbor is. Are they a witch? Are they a vampire? Are they cannibals? Are they a serial killer?
There's something weird about living in a neighborhood, a community, right, where you're practically living on top of someone else. I mean, their house is literally like 10 feet away from you, but you might not know them. Like I live in a condo, and I don't know if I've ever like really had a conversation with the people that live below me. So right. What are they doing in there, man?
Right. And so it's just part of human nature to kind of let your mind wander to these really dark areas of like, I heard this scream last night, and maybe they killed somebody, and then you don't see his wife for 2 weeks because she's on vacation or at some treatment facility or somewhere, and you're like, she's dead. He killed her. Right. And so, that kind of idea where you start seeing, the more you're looking for something, the more you're going to see it.
Right. And freaking yourself out in a way.
Right. And then with no one believing you, it's making you think that you're an unreliable narrator yourself. You're like, am I crazy, or did I see that? So yeah,
we need a movie of the same genre type where someone is seeing something next door, no one's believing him, right? And all of these, it turns out to be, it actually is a vampire, it actually is a serial killer. Turns out that the person actually is just like making things up in their own head, and they're actually just like nosy and need to mind their own business.
Right. that wouldn't be anticlimactic at all.
It's gonna happen one of these days.
Oh man.
So I want to talk about some mind control in this, because that was it wasn't something bad for me. It's just something that like I was a little confused about. So Jerry, he obviously has like the vampire ability to control people's minds, right? Or does he?
I think it's more suggest than actually control.
Right. Well, it's just that you never see him like the spiral eyes or anything like that, where he like gazes at someone and then they start doing what he says. It's just, he's just talking, and all of a sudden, Amy is ready to go home with him and give it up. And so, yeah, when I was watching, I was like, does he actually have mind control, or is Amy like actually like connected to him? Is she actually really ready to ditch Charlie?
Yeah, I think she's actually connected to him. I think we have a little Rockula thing going on here.
So fan theory.
Right. So we have Amy. There's all these paintings of her when he takes her home. It's not just one painting, it's multiple paintings of her throughout the ages. So is she his long lost love? Does she keep getting reincarnated? It feels very interesting. And now there's the thing where he kind of seduces Evil Ed to turn him into a vampire. You could argue that that's hypnotism, but it's also just like, you don't have a choice, kid.
Well, and that's kind of the part where, it's one, it's you don't have a choice. Two, it's like he's talking to Ed about something that like actually probably really hits close to home for him, right? They won't make fun of you again. And
Right.
so that maybe that's more of the psychic connection, is that it's not hypnotism, but it's
Right.
like he can tap into people's deepest desires. Like, they won't make fun of you, come do this with me, but it's actually a lie.
So when he starts to seduce Amy in the dance club, which is also really cool when they're dancing and it keeps cutting to her looking in the mirror and seeing her dance by herself. Such a cool idea for a shot. He starts to almost hypnotize her, and it feels very hypnotic, but then she pushes back and kind of hypnotizes him in return. And you see that change on his face, like, oh, this is someone who can hold their own. This is an equal. This is a reincarnation of my long lost love. She's the only one who made him take a step back and rethink his ability and his action.
Right.
And so I'm going
Charlie.
Except for Charlie.
Why don't you ever put the whammy on Charlie?
He just got annoyed by Charlie because Charlie was annoying.
Charlie, if we're going with the Rockula idea, right? He's also within the prophecy in that he's basically the ham bone pirate.
The ham bone pirate. The old ham bone pirate.
So he's destined to keep them apart.
Right. So my question is, did Charlie ruin true romance? Is that what this movie's about? Is like, yeah. Did he block them?
Well, so there is another question here. And people ask, who and what is Billy? His manservant. They say, one, I have the question, what is he? But I guess that originally, and maybe it got written out or it got cut out, there were like some very homoerotic undertones in it, that they weren't like just roommates or whatever, that Billy may have been his love. So,
when you're alive for 100 years, you probably have many lovers.
Yeah, you take on a few. But what do you think he is? He's clearly not.
I think he's like I thought he was human until the end, of course. But it's he's the Renfield. He's the servant. He's the one who makes sure that the dirt from his home country gets put in the coffin, and he's the one who makes sure that he has all these things. But then we have a picture of when they kill Jerry, and the secret of the use, what I call it,
the Gak attack,
right? This is where I got really confused, and every time I see it, it doesn't get any better. So they shoot him and he dies, which is super interesting because he's human. So they kill him. Got it. And then he comes back up like a zombie. Fine. He's a high functioning zombie. And then they stab him in the heart. And that's the thing that turns him into green slime. Right.
Well, so people have said that he's maybe like a semi-vampire, which I don't think so. I thought he was a thrall, right? Because that's the Renfields, right? Megan, when we watch, she said he's got to be a ghoul. He's undead. He's like a zombie, but smarter, tougher. Could maybe masquerade as a real human. But I saw another interesting thing that said he might be a golem.
I can see that too.
So potentially he was a person, or he made him up of other people over many years to protect him while he sleeps.
Yeah, almost like a Frankenstein type thing, where it's like someone he once knew or trusted, and of course, if that person were human, he would age out eventually. And so, what do? So, right. Is he slowly replaced his blood with this kind of ichor? Yeah, this that allows him to live longer. So maybe he's a human with some kind of magical blood transfusion that lets him live longer.
Yeah, maybe it's one of each.
Right. So I would like to know many more theories. I would like to know from Mr. Tom Holland, either this actor who played Spider-Man or the writer director of this film,
or the famous historian.
Any of you three, could you please tell me what's Billy?
What is Billy?
Billy?
So we have another interesting character trait from Jerry. You notice that he's always eating fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Megan asked me, why is he eating fruit? Do vampires do that? And I was like, I don't know. I think he's doing it because it's very unvampire-y to eat fruit. But I guess from Tom Holland's point of view, it was very vampire-y for him to eat fruit. It was kind of a palate cleanser after he had sucked someone's blood. But also he figured, he's like a fruit bat, right?
Yep. Yeah, no, I think Jerry eating apples is brilliant. It's one of the best parts of the movie. So you've got the fruit bat connection. You've got the kind of uppity palate cleanser of like, okay, I want to taste a different blood, so I need this in between. And then you have the idea of the apple, Adam and Eve, that idea of knowledge and sin, and that's just greater. Down. Yeah, just like, I know things. I'm ancient. I am this. I have the knowledge. I have power.
And it's just casual, low-key, cocky, right? Yep. Like, don't cocky guys in movies like always eat apples.
Right. There's that crisp bite, that sound bit. Yeah, no.
Yeah, what? How do you like them apples, huh? However they sound.
Yeah, that's spot on. So him eating apples is very enjoyable. Let's see what other pictures. Oh, the all in are the prepping. I can't remember what I called it.
Where he has the room filled with candles and
correct.
He goes off the rails.
Right. And so this is another example of that idea that we've been talking about the last couple of episodes about representational as opposed to verisimilitude. Right. Okay. There's no way he got all this stuff in the time it took for him to get it.
I don't know. He's got a mom. She might be real big into candles.
Yeah. And all the icons and crucifixes and no, it's that visual gag, and it's amazing. Right. And it works perfect in this film, and there's nothing wrong with it. But if you were to stop and dwell on it, it's not realistic. It's representational of the idea of it more than, so it represents the idea more than the actuality of it, which is just, it's interesting. It's a shorthand, right? Yeah. And it works perfectly. And it really helps sell the idea that his girlfriend and his friend think that he is insane. Right.
Well, it brings up a good point. He calls the cops.
Yep.
They won't listen. Does he ever visit a priest?
He does not, which is interesting.
Very interesting that, he gets all the religious iconography. He goes to a vampire slayer, but he never goes to a priest like, hey, I mean, maybe that's where he went. He went to a church and grabbed all the stuff off.
It could be a cut.
Maybe laughed him off.
Well, it would be hilarious if they would have shown him robbing a church. That would have been a great. It's like that scene it's like the scene in Lost Boys when they just go in to fill their water guns up with holy water. Yeah. During like a baptism. It's brilliant. Sorry. Yeah, and it takes like a half second, right? Mm-hmm. But it just adds that little bit. I also wanted to talk about Evil Ed. I think we got a picture of him.
Yeah.
What an interesting character. Right. So he's super annoying and his voice is really grating, but it's supposed to be. Also, great impersonation at the beginning. Loved that. It's supposed to be. But then when he turns into the bad guy vampire, that voice and that kind of annoying snarkiness completely works.
Yeah. Because it completes the character in a way.
It completes the character. Like he was a bad guy who didn't have the abilities to be a bad guy.
Right.
And then his makeup is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, he becomes a vampire so that people like won't give him crap anymore. And on his very first outing, on the very first night, he gets like this permanent burn mark on him, showing how much of a loser he like actually is.
Yeah, and his eyes. Oh man, this is just great makeup. I mean, of course the teeth look fake, but it's awesome.
I don't know. I think the teeth look pretty good there.
I love them.
I mean,
but I have a question about the crucifix that got burned into his forehead. It was done by Peter Vincent, who evidently did not have faith, and so the crucifixes did not work on Jerry. but they work on lesser vampires. But if you're a higher ranked vampire,
they worked on Jerry once. I think he did it 3 times. First time it didn't work, and he said you got to have faith. Second time he did it. Oh wait, no, that
it only worked
Jerry.
one time.
It was on Amy.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So it works. So you can have faith or not have faith and get a regular old vampire. But if it's a special Jerry apple eating vampire, then
those apples.
You have to have faith. But then evidently Peter Vincent gets faith at the very end, which again was not done very well in this movie. It was done much better in Dusk Till Dawn. That's a great vampire movie. Because they need him to bless the water, right? They need him to bless it, but he's lost his faith, right? Because his wife died. But then, like it's just great.
Again, if I saw vampires in real life, I'd be like, oh, that's got to mean like the other side is absolutely true, right? Like if you see a demon, it's like, right. Oh, there's got to be angels, right?
Right. And that's what happens in Dusk Till Dawn. But is Ed Charlie's friend?
I don't know. I was trying to figure out what their relationship was. To me, he reminded me of like a special needs Kevin Bacon. And so I don't know if he was like being placated by Charlie, like he's someone who like looked up to Charlie and he wanted to hang out with him and be his friend.
I think
but
it's
Charlie
more,
just
I think it's more like they were friends in like middle school.
Mm.
And then Charlie got maybe a little more popular, and Evil Ed went more of the nerd subculture route. And
okay,
so I could be wrong, but like there's a familiarity between them.
So, no, you go.
No, you go.
There's something that made me think that he was maybe like a bully to Charlie a little bit because he was such a jerk, but he is such a wimp that. Like
it felt like his lashing out at people was like a reactionary, to him being bullied or him being made fun of for like his interests. It's just interesting. It's an interesting character dynamic. Trying to think, what else do you have? I got one more thing I want to bring up.
Well, so I just want to circle back around to Peter Vincent. And he is supposed to be kind of a Hammer horror caricature, right?
That's what I take from it. Yeah,
we have that great scene where he's in the movie and he's pounding the steak in, and it like squirts the blood in his eye.
Yeah, I think you have a picture of that, right?
Yeah, that's that's from straight up from like the Christopher Lee Dracula movies, right?
Yeah.
And I believe the name was taken from obviously Vincent Price and then Peter Cushing.
Yes, it is.
And did he do a bunch of the Hammer horror movies as well? Yeah, I know I've seen him in some.
I can't remember how many he's done.
See, we're going to have to go down that rabbit hole.
Oh, well, we did one, didn't we?
That I don't think that was Hammer horror. The Dracula.
Yeah, it Hammer horror-esque. But yeah, I would love to go to that. So that brings up a point I forgot that I love this in movies. I love fake TV shows in movies. Or fake movies in movies. I don't know what it is, but like I like that Fright Night's a show in Fright Night and that he watches it on TV, and the fact that he meets up with them, that's awesome. But I don't need that. I'm thinking like what other films have really memorable, great fake shows in them? Both Home Alones.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean that's brilliant.
30 Souls, yeah. Angels with 30 Souls.
Angels with 30 Souls. Yeah, I would just love to see those as actual movies, just black and white. Oh man. But I'm sure there are tons of others out there, and I'm sure I would think of them later tonight, but nothing's coming to my head. But just that idea of the show within the shows, I enjoy that.
Well, I have one last question for you before we start to scoop. Amy, at the beginning of the movie, she doesn't want to have sexual relations with Charlie. She immediately turns on a dime and is ready to, but he is watching his neighbor. And then by the end, I think it's implied, if not stated, that their relationship has moved on to a sexual relationship. The vampirism that takes place in between, is there some sort of sexual allegory there that like she's gotta get a little sinful or a little evil?
Maybe.
What are they saying there?
I'll have to think about that. The thing that I took away from the beginning and the end and kind of the character arc is that Charlie needs to pay attention to his girlfriend, to his lover, to the woman in his life.
Mm-hmm.
He's ignoring her, and so rightfully so, she doesn't want to progress physically. Mm-hmm. Because he's still a child. He's not put away childish things. He's still watching the show. He's still fascinated with vampires, which are not real yet. He's still fascinated by the neighbor. He's not paying attention to her, right?
Okay.
And then what he does is he becomes a man. He actually, instead of living in a fictional vampire world, he literally saves her from being a vampire, saves her from evil, kills the vampire, has grown into a man. And then at the end, you have the mirror scene where he shuts the TV off. He stops looking at the window. He pays attention to her. And it could be implied or not implied that they have had sex, but all it shows is that they're making out. But what it does show is that he is giving her the attention that she has earned and deserves.
Right. So it's less of a sexual allegory, and it's more of a like masculine manhood. Allegory.
Yeah, respecting the person that you want to be with.
Well, so the reason, one of the reasons this question came up was because of when she has the iconic shark mouth that comes up, and I've heard that is
we see it before he sees it.
Yeah, it's kind of some yonic imagery, opposite of phallic, and I just couldn't help but wonder, like, if she's going through some sort of progression through the end. But this is all the time that we have for this show. I think we could dive into stuff like that all night and make suggestions. But it brings me up to something very important. I told you we were going to have a special announcement here at the end of the show.
I'm all ears.
What we have coming up, we're not meeting next week, but the week after next, we are meeting, 5 weeks in a row.
All of July.
2 words for you. Shark Month.
Shark Month.
That's right. They do Shark Week. We're taking it out to a whole month. We are going to get together with our good friend, Lance the Obscure Movie Guy. If you haven't checked out his channel, we will put a link down where links go so that you can see it. We're gonna talk about Jaws. First of all, we're gonna talk about the Meg. We're gonna talk about we're gonna find some schlocky schlock to get in between
sharks.
Schlocky sharks, baby.
Stay tuned.
Make sure you tune in. I am Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson. You should probably hit subscribe. This is Chris Anonymous, and we have been Compelled by Schlock. We'll see you in 2 weeks for Shark Month. Bye.
Schlock. Schlock. Schlocky. Schlock. Schlock. I am compelled by Schlock. Compelled by Schlock. Compelled by Schlock. Wait, no.